Hola amigos, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since my last photography video, but today I'm very excited to finally talk about this awesome camera, the Leica Monochrom Typ 246. I have always been intrigued by the monochrome series cameras that Leica offers for a very long time. I love black and white photography, especially for street and capturing more intimate and personal moments. There's something magical about black and white photos, and I find them to be very nostalgic but also gritty at the same time. So the idea of owning a digital camera that only shoots in black and white appealed to me from the very beginning. Now for most people that is probably just an insane idea, and I totally get that, but if you love shooting film, especially a Kodak Tri-X or a similar black and white film stock, then this could be the camera for you. Now the Monochrom is based off the Leica Typ 240, and it is basically identical in construction, features, specs, ergonomics. The only major difference between the two is the sensor. Even though it is technically the same with 24 megapixels, this camera does not have a color filter array or a low pass filter. What this means is that the sensor records only luminance values, so basically your highlights and your shadows, and bypasses the need to assign colors to the image, ultimately giving you a crispier, sharper image with tons more detail thanks to letting the camera sensor produce a pure digital negative. This also means that the raw files are super flexible when it comes to post-processing. They grade so good, and with all of that detail being read from the sensor, there is tons of room for bringing up shadows and blacks. The only negative to this is that you can also blow out your highlights, so it's better to underexpose your images and bring up your shadows gradually in post. This camera was originally introduced in 2015, and it is the second iteration of the monochrome cameras. The OG monochrome had a different sensor and was based off the M9 at the time, while the newer monochrome is based off the M10 and has a 40 megapixel sensor. Now as far as feel, this is a Leica, it's solid and built to last. Since I've had past experience using the Typ 240, this camera feels right at home for me. All of the buttons are where they need to be, everything's tactile. It's just a fantastic camera to use. Now if you want to hear more about the features and shooting experience with the rangefinder Leica camera, I'll link my review of the Typ 240 where I go a little bit more in depth about all of that. So what are the pros and cons of owning this camera for a year now? Let's start with the pros. The Leica quality and feel. Again, there is really no other digital camera out there that can capture the true essence of photography like a rangefinder camera. Now, if you are primarily a black and white film shooter, then I think this is a no-brainer in my opinion. No digital image will ever look like film, no matter how much grade you throw at it to make it kind of look like a film photo. But this camera will get you very close. The price, even though this camera is still a luxury item and not necessarily a cheap camera, even to this day, It is a very viable alternative to the M10 monochrome and even the older OG monochrome. Now those have risen a little bit in price due to the whole CCD sensor hype, but I think this one is the best bang for your buck. And finally, low noise at higher ISO settings. I mean, this camera basically shoots in the dark. It's a perfect camera to take out at night, and your images, even though with a higher ISO setting, will never look as noisier as a color camera. Now let's talk a little bit about the cons. So be prepared for blown out highlights and difficult exposure metering using the rangefinder. Even though the camera has live view, which helps you preview your images, it takes the fun in shooting it as it's intended to be, like a rangefinder camera. The need of filters, color filters are really needed when shooting wide open. The minimum ISO in this camera is 320, so if you plan to shoot outdoors in a sunny day and want that shadow depth of field, it is recommended to use some kind of filter to help with exposure. Now, I typically like the look of the orange filter with this camera. It adds a little bit more contrast, and even the yellow one also works really nice with the camera. Now, the most obvious, no color photos. So this might be a deal breaker for a lot of you, but then again, you wouldn't be watching this video or even thinking about getting a digital black and white only camera, right? I personally don't see it as a con, but I have to mention that anyway. Now, this camera is meant to be more of a creative tool than anything else. It is made for people who love black and white, that don't want to spend too much time editing photos or thinking about color. It is basic and primitive, but gives you all of the functions that you need in a modern digital camera, and I simply love that about it. Now, slap a 50mm lens on this thing and you got the perfect wannabe film camera. Well, I recommend this camera over the newer M10 monochrome. If you want to go all in on a camera like this one, then I will suggest spending the extra money and get the newer version. It has lower ISO settings, it's got all of the improvements and ergonomics of the M10, and also has a much bigger sensor in terms of resolution. Now, if you're on a budget and maybe you want to dabble into black and white photography, or simply just want to use this camera for a different kind of application, but not necessarily be your main camera, then I would 100% recommend this Type 246 monochrome. All right, this is all I got for today. I hope you've enjoyed some of the photos that I've been able to produce with this camera and that I've shown you throughout the video. If you have additional questions, let me know in the comments down below. Please like and share this video and stay tuned for more photography content in the future. Follow me on Instagram and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.